Hi, this is our second tutorial. Here we are trying to implement a enterprise application which has both web module and the EJB module. This application is about the news messages. We can list out messages from a data store and we can post messages to a data store. Here the architecture of our applications. We have a web client and the J2EE application server, which has both web container and the EJB container and the database. The web container has two servlets called list news and post messages and the session bean, and the EJB container has message driven bean called new message bean and the entity facade for our entity class. The entity class name is news entity. The web container, the servlet list news, is to display all the news messages from the persistent data store, and the post message servlet is to send messages to message driven bean. The news entity is a entity that is represent news table in the data store. Okay, let's try to understand how to create the project. I use NetBeans 7.4 and the glass-based server as J2EE application server. Okay, let's see how to create a J2EE project. File, new project, select Java EE and the project is enterprise application. Next, my project name is news app. Next, I use class-based server, or you can use JBoss and WebLogic, any kind of J2EE servers. You can't use Apache Tomcat because it's only a web server. It only contains a web container. It hasn't EJB container. I use class-based server and finish. After creating the enterprise applications, you can see three modules in the project session: news app and the EJB module, news app web module. This module you can't see any source file. This has only configurations file, and the EJB module has source files, and also web module also has source files. Okay, first we create our entity class in the EJB module. You can select the EJB module, new, other, and select persistent and the entity class. Our entity class is a news entity. I use the package as EJB. Keep the primary key type as low, and next my persistent unit name will keep the same. Persistent provider also keep the same, and data store is JDBC sample because I use the Java database, and then finish. Then IDE created add the annotation at entity to denote this class is an entity class, and at ID annotation as well as at generated value. It implies this is auto generated ID. In my news message table, I have another two fields called title and body, so I should add those two fields also: private string title and private string body. And I should add getters and setters for those also. Right click, insert code, getters and setters, select both and generate. You can see the getters and setters for those two fields. Okay, our entity class is also created. After entity class is created, then you can see our persistent.xml file in the EJB module. Then we can create our message driven bean, new, other, enterprise Java beans. You can select message driven bean. Next, I call these as a new message, and package is EJB. Project destinations I use JMS new message. Message driven be named as a new message, and the package is EJB, and project destination should be JMS / new message. I use any messages, and OK, and next, finish. This is the message driven bean. This is our map name and the destination type and the properties queue. It's implement the message listener, and then we can adding annotations called resources. To add the message driven context, private, and then we introduce the entity manager into this class. Right click, insert code, use entity manager. The IDE add persistent context annotation, and also add the method called persist. We rename this method as save because of our simplicity. Okay, now our message driven bean is completed. Not yet, we have to override the onMessage method as well. From the post message servlet, we send in the message to the JMS queue. So we have to save those messages. So the implementations according to that in the message driven bean as like this. Object message should be pom JMS message equal null, and within the try block if message which is passed from the signature method signature, if it is instance of object message, then the message should equal the message. This should be cast to object message, and then our news entity. Message dot, the method is a get object, gets the serializable object contained in this message data. This default value is not, you can understand what the message is doing, and also we have to cast this, and then we can save. Okay, finish the catch. It's exception. and another catch for throwable. Okay, now our message driven bean is completed. Next we have to create the session factory for our entity class. Right click, other, persistence, session bean for entity class. You have to select EJB.news entity and add. Next. Okay, finish. Okay, this is our session entity facade. When we create a news entity facade, it also create the abstract facade, because entity facade, news entity facade extend from the abstract facade. In our list news servlets, we can call these methods to retrieve the messages in the persistent data store. Before, we have to understand about the business interfaces. What is the business interfaces? Business interface is an interface through which a client invokes the bean. Is called a business interface. How the client call a session? It client call the session through a business interface. There are three types of business interfaces available in EJB 3.0: local, remote, and web service. Okay, but in these applications we are not creating the interfaces. From the servlet we directly access the bean. We have coded our EJB module, and then we have to code our web module. Okay, let's see how to code it. In our web module there are two servlets called list news and post messages. First of all, we create list news. Select the web module, new, other, servlet, web servlet. Next, servlet name is list news, and the package is called web. Okay, after creating the servlet, you can see at annotation web servlet name and URL patterns. It comes from the servlet 3.0. Before Java EE6, we have to declare those things in the web XML or a deployment descriptor. Now it is very simple to give the annotations to define this is an servlet. Okay, our list news to retrieve messages from the database through our entity facade in the EJB module. Okay, let's see how to get messages. So we have to inject the resources from EJB, the message driven bean and also the session bean, but the session manager bean is in our web module. So we have to create that our session manage bean, that session bean before the list news servlet. So again select the web module, new, other, we can select enterprise Java bean and session bean. We call it as a session manager bean. package, I will give the web package. This should be singleton. The multi-users can access the singleton session bean. Okay, next finished. You can see the annotation at singleton to denote this is a singleton session bean and local bean, and also the session beans we create to count the number of users in the current session. So we should have another annotation called web listener. Okay, the session beans also implement the HTTP session listener, because it counts the number of users in the current session. Okay, then we have to implement the abstract method, session created and session restored. So we have to first declare a static variable, call it as a private static int count. Initially it should be 0. When session created, it should be incremented by 1. When the session is destroyed, it should be decremented by 1. Okay, and there should be also a method to get the current users in the particular session. So we can create a method called public int get active sessions count and return counter. Okay, our session manage beans also finish. Then we can build the application. Okay, and list news. Okay, now we can inject the EJB enterprise Java beans into the news list servlet. Okay, to inject the enterprise bean, that news entity facade, we can insert code here, call entity enterprise bean news entity facade. We can select. You can see at EJB annotations, and we are injected the news entity facade, and also we have to get that session manager bean. So again, insert code, call enterprise bean, select the web module and session manager bean. Okay, now we have injected both the session manager bean and the news entity facade in the list news servlet. Okay, in our then process request method, we can implement the our method. At the code request dot get session, it should be true. Okay, then we can list the news. There should be a list of news, so we can get the list from util package. news entity facade. It has a method called find all. In our EJB module, the abstract facade, it has a method called find all. Yeah, this is the method. It returns the list. Then in our servlet we can call that method to get the our news messages in the persistent store. Okay, and using for loop or while loop and using iterator, we can get that news messages. News entity, import EJB news entity element dot next, because that list element is news entity element, which has 3 fields: ID, and title, and the body. We have to cast it. Okay, then we can print the title and the body. Get title, because we have used setters, getters and setters, plus okay, and the body. The best thing is we can code these things in JSP, but for the demonstrations I use the servlet as it is. Okay, and link to our post message servlet. So this should be println. Okay, and our current users in the session. Session manager bean dot get access session count. Users reading the news. Okay, now our web module one part is completed. We have one servlet to implement that called post news. Okay, we can check whether the application is running now. So we have to start the Glassfish server. And build the project again. You can see after some time the service running. You can run the project now. It takes some times. The project is running without errors. The first the servlet should be running, so we have to set that servlet. So select the project and get properties, run, and they set the servlet as a list news. Okay, and again you can run the project. Yeah, this is the project. These are some messages. One user is reading the news. We can get another browser, check the session is okay. Okay, 2 users reading the news. When clicking at news message, 404 error because there's no servlets called post message. Okay, then we can implement the post message servlet. Get the new servlet called post message, source is web. Okay, next, finish. Here also we can use annotations to inject the JMS resources. Okay, add resources. Mapped name is I use JMS new message factory. Sorry, private connection factory. JavaX JMX. This should be double quotes, JMS news messages factory, and then we also inject the JMS news message. Okay, queue. This queue should be JMS queue. Okay, before we using Java messaging services, we should have understand about Java messaging services. By reading these articles, we can have a great understand about Java messaging API. It has connection factory. This is our connection factory. We have inject the connection factory to our servlet using add resources, and then our connection, using our connection factory we can create the connection, and by using connection we can create the session. Using session we can create the message producer and the message consumer and the relevant message. And JMS message service component, using reading this article we can get a full understand about Java messaging services. This is a good tutorial about that. This session is used to create message producers, message consumers, and also messages and queue browsers and temporary queues and topics. The client uses the connection factory to create connection sessions, message producer, message consumer. The post messages actually used by the client. This is our connection factory. We have injected to that. Our destinations are called queues. In point-to-point message domain we use queues. Otherwise in pub and sub destinations we call topics. Okay, let's see how to implement other things. There should be a form to get the title and the message. So after body I will add the form tag. Sorry, and in the form okay. And title, input type should be text, and name I will give as title. Okay, and the body that should be text area. And I will give body, and line break, and the submit button. Now our form is created. Then we have to get the values from those text fields. I will get title value to string title, request dot get parameter, the name is title, these name should be matches, and the body string body, okay. Then if title not equal to null, and body also not null. Then using try catch. Connection, we should get the connection. The connection is the JMS connection. Okay, we have injected the connection pattern. Now we are creating the connection. This connection using the connection factory. Create connection. We create the connection using the connection factory. And then the session, we can create the session using the connection. JMS session using connection. Create session. The parameters are false and session dot auto acknowledged, and then create the message producer, because we send the message to the queue using the session. Message produce. Session dot create producer. The destination is queue. Okay, then when create the object message, because queue should store the object messages. Using the session we can create the object message. Okay, now using that title and body we can create our message. That message type is our news entity type, so the news entity from the EJB. We can set title, and then we can set body. Okay, and object message. Okay, set object, that should be serializable object E, because our in our enterprise applications our news entity, that news entity implements serializable class. Okay, message set object E, and then we can send the message using message producer, because we need the message producer to send the message to the queue. Okay, and then okay, as programming good practice we have close all the connection. So dot close, and connection should be also closed. That's a good practice of programming. And then we can redirect to this, respond to the list news. Send redirect list news, and then we can close the catch. That's JMS exception. Okay, our application is now completed. We can run the application. this is our applications. One news is reading, clicking that news message. This is my test, blah blah blah. Yeah, this is that my newly added message. Okay, our applications is working. The tutorial session is finished. Okay, thank you very much.